Good afternoon, class. My name is Troy Jenkins, and I will be doing my interview presentation for Comm 6 Intercultural Comm, instructed by Professor Plump. Now let's take a second and let's think. What state or federal policies and acts since 2010 have had the biggest effect on American culture? I decided to rely on one of my most intelligent friends to get his opinion on this and kind of see what he would decide. This is my boy Henry Ha, Vietnamese American and one of my future groomsmen. Henry decided to highlight the Citizens United Supreme Court case from 2010. The what, you may ask? What is Citizens United? They are a nonprofit organization that was founded in 1988 and they are based in Washington, D.C. The why? Citizens United said that a law violated their free speech rights under the First Amendment during election season. Your next question may be, well, why does that matter? Or why is this important? I'll show you. Before I get to that, though, let's hear from Henry himself. Henry states that it allowed corporations to have even more influence over our political process, which in turn took power, in a relative sense, from ordinary citizens through spending money on political ads, campaigns, and influencing elections. Now, why is this impactful on American culture, and what does this mean essentially? For starters, this means that corporations and unions now have the same free speech rights as citizens. This also means that they can spend unlimited amounts of money on political ads and campaigns to push their political beliefs and agendas. Lastly, what this also means is that they have too much power and can influence the election with the ads and campaigns that they are funding and paying for to reach a global audience, therefore potentially swaying viewers and people from their original beliefs into the ones that they want to bestow upon others. Now, in the text, I learned three key concepts that I feel like are pretty prevalent and important to what I'm discussing. The first one being national history. That is a body of knowledge based on past events that influenced a country's development. In this case in particular, you have a corporation that is fighting for their amendment right to now have the freedom of speech as citizens. This is influencing their ability to now attract global audiences and again push their political agendas. What this is doing is, let's say other countries are looking to see how this works in the United States, where corporations are funding and voicing their opinions on who they want as candidates. This can have an influence on other countries because if they see that that works, they may follow suit and do the same thing as well. Number two, global media. Global media is the mass communication that reaches the world through television, media such as TV, radio, newspaper, and advertising. Lastly, we have value conflict. And this occurs when people have different ideologies. An example, you have corporations and politicians versus the American people. For my next interview, I wanted to talk to someone else and get another perspective on another topic that I feel like is pretty important too, and I'm happy that Vanessa decided to bring this up. This is my friend Vanessa Olmos, Mexican American, and she's one of my literal day one homies in the sense that we have been friends since day one. Vanessa decided to make a point and talk about the legalization of marijuana that started in 2012 and is currently present. On November 6th in 2012, Colorado and Washington became the first two states to legalize the possession and use of adults 21 and older for marijuana. Now, why is this important, you may ask? This challenged federal law, it signified a change in public opinion, and it opened the door for revenue and taxation among the states that decided to legalize the drug. Vanessa says that legalizing marijuana changed the prior stigma due to the war on drugs. It showed the world how harmless it is in comparison to alcohol and other prescribed drugs, while bringing attention to the racial and social injustices, particularly how marijuana arrests disproportionately affected minorities. Now, why is that impactful on American culture? A few things. For starters, legalizing marijuana challenged federal law. Secondly, legal sales mean states can now tax marijuana, generating new revenue for their states. So, for example, in California and Colorado and all those states that legalized it, this means that when you're bringing in new revenue, you have the opportunity to use this to fix your cities and your towns. Potholes, lack of resources for the homeless community, feeding them, and even teachers to the point where they don't have to spend their own hard-earned money on colored pencils and school supplies. And maybe the state that has legalized marijuana can use that tax and use that funding to actually support the working class people. Let's see, you also have industry innovation, including farming, retail, technology, and financial services. Lastly, which I found to be the most interesting, Canada, Uruguay, and other parts of Europe began to follow suit. So initially, when I was talking about how you can have influence on other countries and other locations amongst the world, depending on how well we do, other places looked at America under a little magnifying glass, and they saw how successful it was and how much revenue we were able to generate from a drug that is harmless, and they decided to follow suit and do the same thing in their countries. Now let's go over some key terms that are pretty important and relative to this. The first key term, systemic racism. That is the way in which societies foster racial discrimination through reinforcing systems of housing, healthcare, medium, and the justice system. As Vanessa mentioned and brought light to, when it came to the war on drugs or the policing of marijuana, it was primarily black and brown minority groups that were being targeted for the drugs. Not to mention, now that the drug is legalized in the majority of states, those people that unfortunately are serving sentences for marijuana will still be serving time for them, although the drug is now legal. This goes into media perception, and this is how individuals understand and perceive the role and influence on media, society, and the credibility perceptions of bias or influence that plays a role. When you think about movies, you think about TV, you think about how marijuana was shown to the public, right? It was a drug that makes you lazy. It was a drug that's going to kill you. It's a drug that's addictive. When on the contrary, it's none of those things. But media has pushed this agenda that has put fear into people from it, therefore allowing the government to rationalize it so harshly. Lastly, for number 3, we have the critical approach. And this is the research style that emphasizes statistical measures and understanding quantitative approaches. An example, let's say you have 3 vices. You have marijuana, you have alcohol, and you have tobacco. Of those 3, when you decide which one is actually the most harmful for the communities and for the people, it's going to be somewhere between alcohol and tobacco. It's kind of hard to figure out which one because I guess each does have harsh effects, but marijuana was at the top of the list as far as media perception goes, when in reality, it is something that can be medically prescribed from professionals and essentially is the most harmless and least addictive between the 3 of those. On this slide here, I have some of our citations and sources, including my 2 reliable friends that gave me their opinions and their thoughts behind it. Below that in the smaller citations, I have some quotes from our journal or our book that we use for class, as well as some notes through the Canvas portal from my professor. And in summary, what do we have? American culture can influence and reach larger audiences outside of our country. Policies and laws should revisit their views as it can benefit America in ways that they did not realize. Media plays a pivotal role in everything. The way in which it is used can be harmful or helpful. It kind of depends on what side of the coin you're on. And then lastly, money is power. I hope that you were all able to learn something today from my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed teaching you guys some things. And most importantly, and lastly, thank you for listening.